and welcome to Happy Mum, Happy Baby, the podcast. Now, if you cast your minds back to March, you might remember that to celebrate Mother's Day, I had a little dig through our archives and shared some of my absolute favourite moments with the wonderful mums who have joined me over the years. Do go and have a listen if you haven't already. I absolutely loved it. But of course, I couldn't let Father's Day go past without also shining a light on some of the brilliant dads we've had on the podcast. In a world where masculinity and what it means to be a man is constantly up for debate, it's been a real privilege to hear these men open up with such honesty, vulnerability, and a whole lot of laughter. So happy Father's Day, you lot. But please enjoy some of my very favourite dad chats, starting with the father of my own children, possibly my favourite father of all. It's Tom.
I was really looking forward to being a dad for a long time. And I think everyone has, these kind of preconceptions of what it's going to be like. And then I wanted to be, really prepared. So, we both sat and read all the books and you were, adding books to this huge pile that was growing on my bedside table. And I wanted to read them all, I wanted to know, it's this whole unknown thing you're about to enter into in your life. And I wanted to be really prepared for that. And so I read lots. I then discovered that maybe I shouldn't have read so much because I think I really overthought it, and the reality is that you can't be prepared for it because it's completely, no matter how well it's described to you, how much you read about it, until you're living it and experiencing it, it's a completely unique experience for you as an individual. And so it wasn't like anything that I'd read, really. And
did you find anything that you read good, or did you find it actually had a hindrance on your...
Yeah, I found a lot of the stuff about the pregnancy and the birth, especially the hypnobirthing book. That was amazing. That was really informative and described, what was going to happen with you and your body during birth. I found it described it better than any of the other books I'd read. And then also because we did hypnobirthing for both the kids. So I really enjoyed that book. But I think some of the other ones, which kind of describe people's experiences and things, or kind of the do's and don'ts, or what to watch out for. I just kind of think they'll just go out the window when you actually have a kid.
Well, and they put a lot of expectation on you, I think.
Yeah, and also I found that I was worrying about things I hadn't worried about before because someone else had worried about it.
Yeah.
I read about just stupid stuff that if I hadn't have read that, this person had worried about this, that thought wouldn't have even been in my mind, and I wouldn't have worried about it. And so there's a lot of stuff like that. I just think I would have been better off just winging it, just playing it by ear a bit, because that's what you do as a parent, isn't it? You can't prepare. You have to, because you're entering into a new relationship with a new human that you don't know yet, and that they're half of that relationship. They're going to dictate to you what it's going to be like.
And how did it feel for you when we decided that we were going to not trying it, because we never actually were like, we're going to try for a baby. Our thing is we're going to not try.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of couples do, really, isn't it?
Just a little bit of wording makes all the difference.
Yeah, well, it is. Well, obviously, from hypnobirthing, that's true, isn't it? The way you think about something does totally can change your, the way you think about it. And did I say the way you think about something changes the way you think about something? The way that you word stuff and the way you approach it, if you just change one tiny little thing, then it makes you see it completely differently and takes all that pressure off. You don't know what's going to happen, do you?
Yeah.
Because I think when we were not trying for Buddy, I think because it had taken...
We didn't have a lot of time to not try.
Exactly. I think because...
so quickly.
Yeah, because it had taken so long with Buzz, we were kind of like, we'll just not try now because it's going to take a while, isn't it? And then, what do you know? Pregnant straight away.
Well, before Buzz, obviously we did fall pregnant. I did fall pregnant. I don't think we're one of those couples that are like, we were pregnant.
Can I say we? Or how do I say that? I still don't know. I feel weird. You can't say, no, you were pregnant. I just was there.
But before Buzz, I fell pregnant really quickly. And obviously that ended in a miscarriage. I think I've always processed how that was for me. And I think a lot of women, kind of, it's all on the woman. And I know that's probably because as a man, you don't really have a lot of time to even bond with that idea. It's not actually physically happening to you. But how was that?
It was really difficult, and I think I found it more difficult later on. I think maybe after we had Buzz, that's when it really kind of hit me, and you realise what it was what you went through. And you're right, because even when you have a kid as a dad, I found it really difficult with Buzz for the first 6 months.
Yeah.
Really hard, just worrying about, am I connecting with him? Am I bonding with him? There's this instant connection between mum and baby. And I was not prepared for that at all. And that's with your child that has been born and you're holding and loving. And so having a connection with the idea of a kid, or, that, I'm not experiencing the same physical reactions that you're getting from really early on in pregnancy. And so it's just this idea of that you were pregnant and we were both young. It's the first time it happened. It doesn't really feel real, or that it's happening to you. And I think at the time, we hadn't struggled with getting pregnant before that. So I think it just kind of took me by surprise, and I just thought, oh, is this just something that happens to everyone? I don't know. I just don't think I really could process exactly what had happened until I was a dad.
Yeah.
And then I found it really hard. I think actually after you wrote Happy Mum, Happy Baby and really reading about...
I did chuck the 10,000 words at you at the start and not told you, I didn't tell you what it was that you were about to read.
Yeah, and then, just reading about how you felt through that was really difficult. And it suddenly hit me what we went through. Not just what you went through, but and actually what it was that I went through then as well, and what we lost. It's really difficult.
I am taking it back to an episode that first broadcast in May 2019. It's with the lovely Jeff Brazier. When we first recorded the episode, it was the 10-year anniversary of the passing of Jade Goody, the mother to his sons.
Relationships are really difficult generally. Ours was ridiculously difficult because she was a huge, strong character. She was going through a huge transition in her life, from going from living in Bermondsey with her mum and having her childhood, if she was here to tell the story, which I'm sure she would have done many times, hers was a lot harder than your average.
Yeah.
So here, 2 kids that have effectively learned a lot of lessons through mistakes as opposed to through good example. And, what do those 2 sort of negatives create? I think you had 2 parents that wanted so badly for our children to have what we didn't.
Yeah.
And we fought for it, and we battled so hard to stay together, to find meaning in everything, to try and find resolution in everything, so that we could stay on track, stay together. The truth is that I think the odds were stacked against us, if not because of living our relationship out in the media, which
we were constantly in the papers,
and the media was different at the time.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem so harsh these days, but at the time it was very intrusive. And again, I'm not one of these that like, they ruined it for us, because don't get me wrong, it was difficult enough as it was, but it just magnified it.
Yeah.
The fact that there were people so willing to get that information and to publish it. And obviously, as we know now, like they went about getting that information a lot of the time in a illegal way, which then obviously caused a lot of questions to be asked between Jade and I and our sort of immediate friends. Who's saying this?
Yeah.
Who's selling this story? And it was who's selling out. It was such a regular thing for us to talk about. So yeah, what
But
chance
how
have you got?
difficult to be going through that thing, your own struggles anyway, and trying to navigate your way through that, and then having this external pressure and all of these eyes and these opinions that have nothing to do with your relationship, but are ultimately having an effect.
Yeah, and so many layers of difficulty, ultimately, of disadvantage.
Yeah.
But yet, there was obviously a lot of privilege in our lives at that time. For 2 young kids who had grown up with not a lot, we suddenly sort of, found ourselves earning good money, and so I can't say that it's all. I certainly wouldn't want people to feel sorry for us in that example. But the one thing I'm sort of not talking about is how difficult it was having a baby.
Yeah. Exactly.
And do you know what? Actually, I've used the wrong word, because I didn't find it difficult.
Didn't you?
No, I didn't. And maybe being a dad and having Bobby was some form of distraction from the difficulties in our relationship. But I only ever felt really calm, really capable. I used to love carrying him around everywhere, taking him shopping. I remember so many women would sort of be like, "Oh, you're good, aren't you?"
Oh yeah, I hate that.
Well,
And like Tom's got Max today.
Yeah.
And I made a point of posting about it on Instagram and going, it's not daddy daycare, he's a dad.
he's a dad, yeah. He has equal responsibility
Exactly.
over this little life.
Exactly.
I agree with you. At the time, I think it did sort of make me, it did flare up, like, should people be saying that? Is that almost a
different
bit of
time as
an
well, isn't
insult?
it?
But I also understood, yes, it's different. It's obviously 15 years ago,
Yeah.
but also the fact that they're saying that in relation to their experiences
Yeah, exactly.
of dads and brothers and uncles and
Yeah.
stuff. So I didn't really take a great deal of offence.
Yeah.
Not necessarily my style to do so, but I just remember that being a dad equaled pride,
Yeah.
you know? And yeah, and I enjoyed it from the word go, to be honest.
Sleepless nights?
And then, we would have had to have got. But to be honest, both of them have slept incredibly well
Really?
throughout the whole of their. I remember we'd split by this time, and I think the boys obviously stayed with me in my bed when they were maybe a little bit older, and I remember one of them, actually, I think it was Freddie, he fell off the bed, which would have been maybe 2 or 3 foot, standard sort of double bed height. And I just remember waking up in the morning and being like, oh my God, one of my kids has disappeared. But I looked on the floor and he was just laying there on the carpet without any sheets or anything because he just got on with it.
Yeah.
And he's such a log, as am I. That's when you just think, right, these kids they're going to sleep through their whole childhood, no problem. So I got away with that one, actually. I don't remember that being particularly difficult.
Was it a very difficult decision deciding to end your relationship? Because when kids are involved as well, you know, and you're both kind of fighting for this sort of happy family life that, you know, you both wanted. Was it a difficult decision to kind of go, actually, we're better apart?
I think we both probably suspected it. We might not have wanted to have admitted it. And there's this element of guilt that we both would have felt over, I'm now the person who is ultimately deciding that Bobby's not going to have what we didn't have. Yeah. You know, so we're going to end that sort of that fairy tale, if you like, of delivering what we didn't experience. But yeah, I think as time went by, again, it just became more and more obvious to both of us that we were fighting a losing battle, and actually it was probably starting to really affect both of our mental health. By which I don't think that I was close to a breakdown as such, but you know, I don't know. There's layers to it. There's a scale, isn't there? I don't know how far along the scale I was, but I just know that I was really stressed and I felt helpless. Helpless is exactly the word, actually, because when I met Jade, I saw a side that nobody else had the benefit of seeing while she was obviously on telly on Big Brother, and it was the last thing that she actually wanted to show people, because that was her vulnerability. But she gave me the right to see it, and it was beautiful, and she was, you know, an incredible person for all her experience. And I got it. I got the fact that she'd had such a difficult childhood that she wasn't always going to be easy to be with, and I accepted that. But yeah, I think it just got to a point where I knew that I was powerless to help her. Yeah. Because she had to find that herself. If she was ready to look back into her past and try and make sense of it all, so that she could be the best version of herself every minute of the day, as opposed to just switching it on and off when it felt safe to do so. Safe's the word, really. I had to sort of concede that, and that was difficult for me. So not because of ego or anything, but just because I come out of my experiences feeling like I was confident. I felt a lot of. I felt like I had a real ability to help. Like a caretaker, you know. Some of us are people that need looking after. Some of us are people that need to look after people. Yeah. And I wanted to do that for Jade, but I had to admit defeat at a point, and I think that's where it started to just fizzle out. And then I think, that was it from there, because everything was so rocky. Actually, the parenting bit seemed easy, because actually we were enjoying it so much that it was unconditional love,
Yeah.
whereas love had been unkind to us, I think, before that, not in partnerships necessarily, although that was the case for Jade, but from our parents.
Yeah.
I speaking personally for me, not ever having met or known my real dad, and the lack of, or the loss of identity that would take place when you don't have that clear example of who you are and where you're from in front of you on a daily basis. And for Jade, obviously her parents had their issues with drugs and God knows what else. She saw all that. She went through all of that. So actually, for us to be able to just love a child unconditionally was like loving ourselves, and it was something very natural for both of us. So actually, that's where it was easy.
Today's guest is a professional matchmaker. He is a certified life coach. He is an author. He is a presenter of shows that you definitely know, Celebs Go Dating and Married at First Sight. I know, you're hooked now. He is a father of 2 boys. It is Paul C. Brunson.
We get emotional, man. We get emotional too. We are attached too. We love too. I think society hasn't equipped men with the words, and that's a whole thing that we need to work on, is how to be more emotive. But it's there for most of us, not some, for most of us. So leaving, you're absolutely right. It was hard. I was crying at the airport, and I was thinking, is this the right thing? Should I be doing this? And when I went, I had a hard time being away. And that was when my wife and I made the pact, and we said, okay, look, if ever either of us have a project that's over 10 days, we just go together. But in order to do that, because a lot of people hear that and say, oh, well, because you had a TV show and blah, blah. No. I had no money. We had no money at that time. I mean, I was being paid nothing, basically. We were starting a business. We had nothing. I was wearing the same suit all the time. Like, I had no money for wardrobe, to the point where there was one day, we had one dark day, one day off, and one of the EPs said, Paul, we're going to take you to the mall, basically. Like, you got to change what you're wearing, And so we had no money. So we had no privilege from that standpoint, no economic privilege. But what we decided is that we would have to just set boundaries and restructure our life and not live life according to how the world dictates we should live life. And that was really when my wife and I started to create the life we wanted, opposed to the life that people assumed of us.
I mean, how did you start doing that? Because, I think building a structure around your values is really important. But for so many of us, we get trapped into this, I get married, I have a baby, then that baby grows up, they go to school, and we stay in this one house, and then, we'll earn a little bit more money, and then we'll move to a bigger house. And, that's kind of where it's set. But actually, if you're away from that, how do you find a way that is true to you and Jill and that works for your family?
Well, it starts with exactly what you said, is the values, right? And this is very important, is that very few of us, I think, have done the work on what our values are. To the point where I hadn't until I started to get clients. I mean, in full transparency. So with our matchmaking agency, what ended up happening is we would start coaching to prepare our clients before we would match them.
Right.
And that would go from 2 weeks to 3 months to now 6 months of coaching. One of the most impactful exercises was what we called a values exercise, where every client had to sit down and literally write out their values. And there was a tricky way that we were able to pull it out. We were like, think of a day 3 years from now that's the ideal day, the optimal day, right? And I want you to write down what that day is. You wake up at what time? What do you hear? What are you wearing? Who's next to you? What do you do? Right? And I would look at that entire, narrative that was outlined. Maybe it was 3 pages of the beautiful day. And from that narrative, I would look at literally where the most page real estate was. And wherever the most page real estate was showed me, in part, what you aspire to value.
Yeah.
So you would see someone who, out of 3 pages, 2 of the pages was my family. I woke up and my entire family. My father was in the house. My mother was in the house. My brother and sisters were downstairs. Like, so you knew family. That's the value that you aspire to. So we, and there were other exercises we did, but we would identify the values of our client. And then after we've identified the values, we would help them to make sure that they are feeding those values every week. They're doing something to help to bolster those values because that helps with their well-being.
Mm-hmm.
This is precisely what I then took into my life. I was like, I'm sitting here talking about values. Do I really know what my values are?
Yeah.
Because so many of us just read the script.
Yep.
Like, if you were to ask me before I did that exercise, I would say, I value Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I grew up in the church. I was like, yeah, religion. Like, that's my thing. And then I realized, man, I haven't been to church in like a decade. I haven't picked my Bible. It has an inch of dust on it. You know what I mean? And so I realized, okay, so maybe it's not a top 5 value of mine. And that's not what my community is telling me to have, but that is truly what where my so identifying the values, your values, that's where it starts, is you have to identify your values. And then the next part I would say is to really look at opportunities opposed to restrictions.
Right.
A child, immediately what happens when you have a child? They're like, oh, it means you can't travel anymore. Mm-hmm. You definitely can't travel. You're going to bring a 2-year-old with you on the plane? You can't do that. All the diseases and viruses and illnesses and, oh my gosh, how are they going to do it? You got to bring a stroller on the plane? What? Like, yes, we are. We're going to do it. Do you have a problem with it? Doesn't matter because we're going to do it. So we would look at them as opportunities. Like we say, okay, no, you know what? We're going to travel. Right off the gate. We're like with Kingston, automatically,
Many people will know him from Busted, from McBusted. He's an amazing actor, incredible. If you get the chance to ever see him on stage, please do. He just finished 222 last night. I went to see him a few weeks ago and I'm very, very proud of him. He is dad to 3 gorgeous children and married to one of my best mates. It's Matt Willis.
Hey! Emma was pregnant and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
We had a miscarriage when we were away one time and it was really, and it happened. And it was awful. And then I think when she became pregnant again, I just thought subconsciously that it would happen again.
Right.
I just kind of almost prepared myself for that in a way. So when she was 7 months pregnant, I was like, oh shit, this is going to happen. I'm going to have a baby, and then it hit me, and then, but I was,
So do you think you were almost sort of disconnecting yourself from it a little bit just in case?
I think so.
So like protecting yourself in a way?
I think so, and I was kind of still a bit of a mess in those times, like I was kind of like, I was relapsing and I was kind of trying so hard to stay clean and it was kind of, and it was a really difficult time for everybody. And then I was...
Obviously, because of that, I guess both of your ways of coping with miscarriage would have been different as well. And also, I think sometimes with miscarriage and loss, you don't process it at different times. Like things can happen, like a pregnancy, that forces you to look back and to process what's gone on and kind of address it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know whether that was mixed up in my addiction at the time. I think my addiction was just my addiction, and it was kind of separate to everything, and it was my overriding demon that I was kind of trying to kind of battle on a daily basis. And then when Isabel was born, I stayed clean for a while, and then I relapsed again when she was about 6 months old, and I kind of and I missed Emma's birthday. She was in Birmingham, and I kind of I was doing a TV show at the time, and it was the wrap party, and someone just handed me a glass of champagne, and I was off the races that night. And I turned up at her parents' house at like 4 a.m. off my head, and I was like, it was the worst. And but then the next morning, I kind of walked down. I knew what I'd done, and then I kind of, Emma told me that I missed Isabel crawling, for the first time, she kind of bum shuffled and stuff, but I never, she never crawled. And she called that night, and I was in a pub in Watford with strangers, and then in a car with strangers. I missed that, and it really and it dawned on me that I was going to be a terrible father. And it really hit me, and I saw everything, that cycle of shit repeating, and it hit me like a ton of bricks, and it was, and everyone talks about kind of rock bottoms and things, and and I've always been scared of those words because people die at rock bottoms, I don't know whether or not we have to hit them or what we can define them as, because they're a scary thing to define, and it's just all right, he hasn't hit his rock bottom yet. I think that's a terrifying thing to say because, that if we keep searching for it, we'll find it, and it's, but that for me was the turning point. And I ran out the house, and I walked down the road, and I walked to the pub, and I kind of and I didn't go in, and I had some gear in my pocket which I chucked in the bin, and I bought a Lucozade, and I walked back to the house, and I got on my knees and I apologised, and I said I was so sorry, and I was going to change, and I really meant it, for the first time I really meant it. I'd said it 1,000 times, but that moment, it wasn't so much about stopping drinks and drinking drugs. It was about being a terrible father, and losing everything, and them having to live with that, and it became about something else, and it really
Also, I guess if your whole life you're kind of gearing towards, you said before about the thing that you wanted to be was a dad, and actually realising that you were going to become the opposite kind of dad to what you wanted and what you dreamed of.
Yeah.
And because people
Absolutely.
can say, and you'd have met loads of people along the way who would share their story, share the realities of their story, the realities of yours. We both know people who have lost their lives because of addiction. But it's one thing, those stories are one thing, but actually the reality of you and the innocence of that moment actually possibly is very different to this other big stuff that's out there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, when I think back to it, I've had so many kind of influential people in my life sit me down, when I think back to it, really pivotal people in my life kind of sat me down and went, Matt, you've got a problem, you've got to sort it out. Yeah. And I was like, what? No. And at times I've gone, yeah, because I don't want them to think less of me, But this was not that. Yeah. This was me realising that everything that I had resented and that had fed my self-hatred, my kind of every dark moment of me, I was then going to inflict on other people, and it was really obvious. There was no two ways about it. I couldn't get out of it, and I couldn't stop. And then I just I surrendered, and kind of went, I have a real problem here. I don't know what to do, and I asked for help, and people gave it to me freely. It was beautiful, and it's been an ongoing thing daily since then.
Today I'm very excited because I've got two mates with me. One who I've worked with in 222, A Ghost Story. The other is his wife, but possibly my most favourite out of the couple. Sorry, James. It's James and Claire Buckley.
Hello.
Well,
thanks for having me, I guess. I think that's something that's maybe changed as well with sort of parenting. I know my children. I'm good mates with my kids. I love hanging around with them. And I love being their dad. I don't feel like I had that with my parents.
Maybe dads in particular, I think,
that
are a lot
really
more
changed,
open now and a lot, more involved and softer. A lot more.
I guess so. Just a lot more up for being involved, and it's
you can see how it's changed.
It was just the way the things.
Yeah.
It was just the way the things were. They crack jokes or ask questions that I would be way
Never.
too
Yeah.
scared to
100%.
talk to my parents about.
Yeah. It's that thing, isn't it? Whatever happens in life, know that your mum and dad are
That's
on your
it.
That's
side.
it.
Like, we're
If you
there.
know that, then
That's what I feel is my job as a parent, to be their
Yeah.
go-to,
yeah,
to be the
100%.
person that they can go, I've maybe made a bit of a mistake here. Can you help me out?
Even
I
if
go,
it's just a
yeah.
little thing,
Yeah, anything. Anything. That's what I feel is the sort of the simplest way of putting the role as a parent is being their go-to.
Yeah, that's good.
There are so many parts of it though that we don't, that we didn't experience growing up, like social media,
Yeah.
like the phone situation. Like I was with a teenage girl the other day who was Snapchatting her new boyfriend of a few weeks. It's like, and I think there was a conversation about how he didn't see the whole of her face and he wanted to see the whole of her face. And I was like, just make sure it's only ever the face. Because you can understand how when you're in that moment with that person, and it's all, I don't know how, I know how easy it would be for a teenager to kind of go, oh yeah, I'll send you a little something else. And,
Well,
there's this whole other world that we weren't a part of.
Funnily enough, Harrison actually, I think this is a thing in schools now. It certainly is at the boys' school. Harrison getting to the last year of primary, they start talking about sex education and the do's and the don'ts and things to be careful of. And they also go into the online world and sexting, which, Harrison came to me and was like, oh, this is a thing. And I was like, oh, okay. But I thought that was great. Don't be careful about pictures, and who you're talking to might not be who you think you're talking to, and all that sort of stuff. So
I think kids are. I think kids are luckily quite clued up about this sort of thing from an early age. But obviously, I do worry about that sort of thing.
Yeah, me too.
But with any of those conversations, sex, things like that,
How comfortable are you with those conversations, James?
I think I am quite comfortable. And
Are you?
Yeah, I think I approach those conversations with humour and making them seem like it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I was actually away working when when Harrison had his first sex education lesson.
yeah,
And I was talking to the family on FaceTime, and Harrison went, "Oh, Dad, had my first sex education lesson today." I went, "All right."
I'd already texted you and warned you that he was going to ask you some stuff.
He went, "I've got some questions."
Okay.
And I went, "To be honest, mate, I've probably got some questions for you. I think you might be able to teach me a thing or two." But I just think that sort of relaxed, not making things seem like a big deal. Again, making him feel comfortable that you can talk about. And sex is funny. It's a funny thing.
Yeah.
That is with you.
Well, and also, but rather than go down that
I've
route,
told her to stop laughing at me before. There was one time when I went, "You've got to stop laughing now," and it became awkward, so she couldn't stop laughing. And I went, "Do you know what? Forget it." That was years ago. That was in the flat.
Yeah. All right, forget it. You do your little thing and you walked out.
Yeah, all right.
But better, that is real. Do you know what I mean? And rather that than kids just watch a load of porn and think that it's something completely different and not real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids aren't idiots.
Yeah.
They
That's
don't have
the
to.
thing.
Thanks,
So
Claire.
you got a bit of fluff on
Thank
your
you.
face.
And you don't have to talk to them like they're idiots.
No.
That's something that we've never ever done with our kids as well.
Yeah.
We never did a baby voice or hello, like we never.
The doggy woggy, we didn't ever really do that.
As
It
soon
was
as,
just it was just a dog.
as soon as Harrison was born,
It was a dog, actually.
even when he was sort of like a couple of days old, and he'd open his eyes, and I'd be like, "Are you all right, mate? You waking up? Are you? Come on, here you come. Right, what we got?" Like you do, we both did speak to them like we were having a conversation with a friend constantly. And we've always had that dialogue and that way of talking with the boys. I don't mind talking to them about anything, and hopefully they don't as well. I think that's important.
They know, like James said, humour is, it's always there for us as well. So even if something's a bit embarrassing and stuff, we will all just sort of laugh. But then we can sort of then sit down and go, right, but this is what it means, and blah, blah, blah. And obviously Jude's not there yet. Jude doesn't know anything. But Harrison, he was just like, yep, got all the information. If there's any, because I was like, have you got any questions? You know, trying to be really cool and calm. Is there anything you'd like to know? And he was like, no, I think I'm all right.
Yeah.
And then he came back to me a couple of days later, actually, and was sort of like, oh, so do you get like your period and stuff? And da-da-da. And I was like, right, yeah. So then I sort of gave him a quick roundup of that, and he was like, Jesus. That was the one that, you know, he was fine.
Sorry, I asked.
Yeah. He was fine with the hairy balls and all that sort of stuff. But that one, he was like, God, I'm glad I'm not again. And I was like, yeah, thank you. But no, it's all just, you know, take it with a little bit of a laugh, but get the point across. And
Especially with like online things and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It's super important for them to know they can come to you and they can have a chat with you. And they're not going to get in trouble, and
that's it.
we'll laugh at the naughty words together and stuff like that. It's not a taboo thing.
That's good. Right, if you could write a letter on being a parent, who would it be to and what would you say?
I suppose I'd write to a new dad, and I would say, tell them to enjoy it, because it's not
Fleeting.
it is fleeting, but also you don't. I'm trying not to be a bit of a lad, but the dad being an expectant dad is clear, obviously, for obvious reasons, way more fun than being an expectant mother. There's nothing physically happening to you. You're sleeping fine. You're not. There's no chemical imbalances going on. It's not. There's not been a physical.
Did he just call me crazy?
No, but no, not at all.
Chemically imbalanced.
Yeah.
Maybe not crazy.
He posh called me crazy, didn't he?
Well, you know, sometimes when you're standing outside Nando's waiting for it to open, you do still
I was a
think,
beast
Jesus, is she all right? Pressing your face up against the window. Fire it up! Get it fired up. I know you're not open for another 5 minutes, but you can turn the ovens on now.
Best Fernandez.
Oh, bless you.
No, I would say enjoy it. It's fun. It's fun being a dad. It's so much less serious and more fun. You know, whether that's fair or not. Unfortunately, it just is. That being a dad's the best.
Seeing as this is a very special episode, a Father's Day episode, I thought I would bring along a special guest. Please tell me your name and your age.
Max, and I'm 6.
And who are you?
Your child.
My son. Right, up you get. Right, okay.
My son.
My son. My sunshine.
Am I my son?
No, you're my son.
Oh.
Not your son, my son.
Oh.
You are you. And I'm your mum.
Okay.
So it's Father's Day episode.
Yeah.
So I thought I would get the opinion of a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a good dad?
Be kind.
Yeah.
Be happy.
Have you ever seen a dad and gone, oh, that's a good dad?
Yeah.
Yeah? And what was that dad like?
Good. Because it was my dad.
Oh, mate! That's nearly made me cry. Can you describe your dad and what makes your dad so brilliant? What does he do?
He cared for me.
Yeah.
He's kind.
Mm-hmm.
He's happy.
Yeah.
Sometimes grumpy.
Sometimes grumpy. I think we're all a little bit grumpy sometimes.
And plays with me.
Mm-hmm.
And good.
He's good. He's a good human.
Yes.
What do you love playing with your daddy?
Lego.
Yeah. Is he as good as Lego at Lego as you are?
No, I'm better.
Okay, and finally,
Do it, dude.
I end the podcast by
Bye.
No. I end the podcast. Ready? I end the podcast with you completing one sentence, okay? And that sentence is, I'm happy when.
When Daddy plays with me.
That's very cute. Right. Would you like to say goodbye to everyone?
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone. Happy Father's Day. Do you want to say it?
What?
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. Bye.
High five. Well done, mate. Whoop de whoop de whoop whoop whoop.